Hey, what's going on YouTube? Hantaa here, and I'm going to be helping you guys pick your first Warframe in Warframe. Alrighty guys, with the intro out of the way, let's get right into this video. So, at the start of the game, you are going to have the choice between three different Warframes. Their names are Excalibur, Mag, and Volt. Each of these three Warframes are pretty good, and all of them are rather viable throughout the rest of this game. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to give you guys a quick breakdown on all three of the Warframes. We're going to look at their abilities, their passives, etc. From there, I'm going to be giving you guys my personal advice and my feelings on all three of them. And I'll be giving you guys a look at their abilities and stuff a little bit more in depth. And then from there, you guys can make an informed decision of which Warframe you want to start out with in your experience here in Warframe on Switch. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to head over here to the Arsenal. We're going to go over to Excalibur and hit Abilities. All right, so it should be noted, just really quickly, Excalibur is kind of the poster boy of Warframe. He's kind of the face of the game of sorts, if you want to look at it like that. Another way to kind of look at him, he is kind of the melee frame. That's kind of his thing. So we're going to kind of give him a good little look over here. We're going to go ahead and check out his passive right here. His passive, I believe, is called Swordsmanship. Excalibur will do 10% increased damage and attacks 10% faster when wielding swords. So if you give him anything like from a sword and shield to sword, regular swords, Nakanas, I don't know if daggers still count. I don't think daggers will count, but if it's anything else like swords, sword and shields, and stuff like that, you will be doing 10% more damage and attacking 10% faster, which is really good on this character. So that's going to be his passive. We're going to take a good look at his one, which is called Slash Dash. Dash between enemies while slashing with the Exalted Blade. This is a pretty decent ability. It's really used a lot of times for movement. On low level enemies, you can kind of run through about 3 or 4 enemies and kind of kill them all with this attack. So it's pretty cool, pretty solid ability. Moving on to his 2, Radio Blind. One of the tools that I think are kind of essential to this kit. Radio Blind is going to be, it emits a bright flash of light, blinding all enemies in a small radius for several seconds. So basically, when you use this ability, it's going to blind enemies. They'll kind of stagger a bit, and that opens them up to something called finishers, which will allow you to kind of kill them a lot quicker and do a bit of extra damage. It should be noted that when enemies are blinded, you do get the stealth multiplier, so you end up doing a bit more damage to them. Well, not a bit, kind of a lot more damage to them, and you can take enemies out a lot quicker. So this is a very important ability. So we're going to go to ability 3 here, or history, Radio Javelin. This launches javelins towards enemies, dealing high damage and impaling them to walls. This is just a pretty cool ability overall. I think it's pretty fun to use. You can impale enemies, as you can see here in the video clip, and it does pretty decent damage. So if you like this, I mean, here you go. You got an ability for you if you like this kind of thing. And lastly, the big boy button, as I like to call it, the Exalted Blade, Excalibur's 4. All right, summon a sword of pure light and immense power. This is probably the ability that I think Excalibur is known the most for. I don't know any Excaliburs that don't use this ability personally. It's just overall, its usability, its function, its versatility is just, it's one of those abilities that like you can kind of use for anything, and it really has given this character, I think, his name and place inside of this game, to be completely honest. So those are Excalibur's 4 abilities. I'm not going to bother going into the tips. You guys can look at those ultimately when you guys get the Warframes or when you're making your decision. Just really quickly before I go any further, just so you guys know, all Warframes have 4 abilities and they have a passive that goes along with it. The abilities are usually called their 1, 2, 3, and 4, just by their numerical order. And then their passive is usually it's an ability that you can kind of get in the game at some point sometimes, but yeah, just something just really quick for you guys to kind of quickly understand. Nothing too major that you have to worry about. Also, you will not have access to all 4 of your abilities once you pick the Warframe. In fact, you have to rank up, and as you rank up, you will unlock all 4 of them. Don't worry, it's not a major level cap for you to get them all. I think you just have to rank. Once you reach rank 10, you get all 4. To get your 2, I think you have to hit rank 3. For your 3, you have to hit rank 5, I believe, and then for your 4, it's rank 10. So at rank 10, you'll have everything unlocked. It's not super hard, especially early on in the game. You will easily get to rank 10, so don't worry too much about it. It's just so that you guys are aware. You won't have access to all these in the beginning. I don't want you guys to think, oh, you're like mashing something that's not happening. You think something's horribly wrong. So, yeah. All right, cool. Now, from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at these abilities a little bit in depth. All right. So for this, I am here in the simulacrum. I'm going to come over here to gain some energy, make sure I have everything all filled up. I do, which is pretty great. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to spawn in a couple of enemies. I'm going to make sure they're pretty low level just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. I'm not going to bother unpausing anybody, so yeah. This is just so you guys can see the abilities, so don't, crucify me or anything like that. Thank you. All right, so here's how the one works. Again, I have Excalibur at rank 30, so it's going to work a little bit different from you than it does for me, but as you level them up at max rank, you'll see that it's going to be the same thing. So with this, as you can see, we slash through multiple targets and kill all of them. And that was, I believe, 8 enemies that we just killed all in that motion. All right, so that is his slash dash. Again, it's also used for mobility. So just to give you a quick example of that, if I wanted to clear a bit of distance, I would just kind of come over here and boom, slash dash. And you see I can clear quite a bit of distance from using that ability. We're going to come back up here now, and we're going to go and we're going to spawn a couple more enemies real quick, just so I can show you guys his other abilities and how they kind of function. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and simulate again. Now for his 2, which is Radio Blind. Like I said before, it's an ability that blinds enemies, and it allows you to do quite a bit of work in terms of damage. So if we go ahead and we hit this here, enemies are blinded. As you see, they're kind of stunned, and they kind of can't see. It's pretty great stuff. I'm only affecting these first 4 because that's all that are within the range of the ability right now. But as you see, if I get in the middle of them, boom, as you see, they'll take additional damage. So that is pretty cool. I'm going to do it one more time just so you guys can kind of see the idea of how like finisher damage and stuff will kind of come into play, or like finisher attacks. I could technically just do it because these enemies are paused, but we're not going to go ahead and worry about that, right? We're going to go ahead and do this here, and look at that. That guy gets that. If I come behind this guy, he gets stabbed in the back, and boom. So just a really quick little, brief explanation and idea on how Radio Blind works. His 3, I don't have any walls that these enemies are really going to necessarily get pinned to, but you'll still kind of get the idea of how the ability works and get to see it in action. So if I come back over here to these guys again, here we got our enemies, and I'm just going to go ahead and boom, stab into the ground. As you can see, it affects everybody, right? And then blammo. For the most part, I think all of them are dead. I don't think anybody's left. Yep, they all died. Cool. Sweet. Easy peasy. And now, one more time, just for the little, so you guys can see the ability that Excalibur is known for, which is his 4, aka Exalted Blade. So I'm going to go ahead and press 4 here, and this is it. You are wielding a sword made of pure energy. It does insane amounts of damage, and if you later on get the Augment Chromatic Blade, you will thank yourself in the long run because you're going to do some rather insane things. Alrighty guys, so that is pretty much going to do it for Excalibur. We're going to go ahead and go into my starter Warframe, which is one of my favorites personally, and that was Mag. So here we are. This is going to be Mag. As you can see, I kind of did like these little basic looking versions for you guys, kind of colored them a little bit, and gave them different weapons as best that I could. Thought it'd be kind of just, cool little way to see it, just so you can see how things kind of vary up, right? So coming over here to Mag, we're going to go ahead and look at her abilities. Now, Mag is all about, well, magnetism, telekinetic stuff and magnetism, Magneto, cool stuff. So we're going to come over here to Mag's passive. Bullet jumping pulls in nearby items for easy collection. So basically what this means is that you're killing enemies, ammo pickups, energy, health drops, anything. As long as when you bullet jump near it, it'll kind of gravitate towards her, and you can pick them up a lot easier. This also applies to mods and things of that nature. So Mag is a pretty unique frame. To be completely honest, she is probably the most technical out of the 3 frames that you start out with, just because her kit kind of interacts with each other in a very interesting kind of way, right? And I'm going to kind of display that a little bit for you guys. And a lot of people, myself included, are going to recommend to you that you don't start out with Mag, simply because, one, she's super easy to get in the star chart, and secondarily, she kind of requires a bit of modding to make the most out of her kit. But again, at the end of the day, it's all about personal preference and choice. If you want to play Mag, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Like I said, I started with Mag. She's one of my favorite Warframes in the game, personally. I just think she's really cool. So there's nothing wrong if you decide to yourself that you want to start with her. It's just understand that, again, you're going to have to get a bit of mods to make the best use of her kit possible. That being said, let's go on into the abilities. Her one, which is called Pull. Magnetic Force pulls enemies towards you, stunning them and bringing them into melee range. As you can see here by the video clip, that's the move in action. I will still be showing it to you guys here in the simulacrum just so you guys can get a better look and idea of how things work. Alright, Max 2 is going to be called Magnetize, and this is one of her more important abilities. It's kind of essential in her kit, so we're going to kind of go into that. So her 2, Magnetize. This creates a magnetic field around a target, ensnaring nearby enemies and dealing damage over time. The field reacts to bullets and shards created from Polarize to increase the damage. So basically what we like to call magnetize is the bubble. All right, we put enemies in a bubble, and that bubble is going to constantly do damage to them over time. Bullets and things that go and interact with the bubble will enter it and still do damage to said enemies. That being said, we're going to head over here to Polarize. Emit an energy pulse that depletes enemy shields and armor, creating shards which become deadly when mixed with Magnetize. Shields of allies touched by the pulse are restored. So Polarize is a super good ability, right? Pretty much in Warframe you can understand that there's things like armor and shields, and realistically you want to get rid of that as much as possible because you want to do more damage. You want big numbers, and it's going to help you kill a lot faster. So Polarize is an essential ability for that. But what Polarize also does is when it strips enemy shields and armor, or even if it doesn't strip it and you use that ability, what it tends to do is it creates these little shards on the ground that when you use R2 over here, Magnetize, will get sucked up into the bubble and do quite a bit of damage. So I'm going to kind of show it to you guys so you can understand how these two synergize together, because that is essential in her kit and it's kind of the big thing with her, right? And then we have our 4, which is called Crush. Magnetize the bones of nearby enemies, causing them to collapse upon themselves. So essentially what Mag will do, she picks up a bunch of enemies in a large group, and she will, as the video will describe, basically crumble their bones and make them collapse upon themselves. It's pretty cool looking. I'm a big fan of that move. What a lot of people don't know is that when you use this move, you also gain shields for each enemy affected. Alright, without further ado, let's go ahead into this real quick. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to kill off these 8 guys real quick. I'm going to spawn a lot more of them just to make this a little bit easier. I'm going to spawn 20 so that way I can just kind of show you guys a lot easier. So, this is Mag. Here's how she looks. She's got pretty decent movement, all that good stuff. As you can see, her passive comes into play here. So that's a little bit of that real quick. Alrighty, so Mags 1. See these guys over here? All you're gonna do is you're gonna press 1, and what happens is, boom! Everybody gets ragdolled over in my direction, which is pretty cool. A lot of fun, pretty funny ability overall. I'm not gonna lie. Yo, this guy got like super launched all the way over there. All right, so we have all these enemies here, right? So I'm gonna show you guys Magnetize, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you Polarize first because they work together, right? So when I cast Polarize here, what's gonna happen is all their shields are gonna go bye-bye. Then I'm gonna put them in the bubble here. And we're going to go ahead and we're just going to shoot to the end of the bubble to kind of kill these guys real fast. And bada boom, bada bing, enemies go bye-bye. Now, I understand these guys are pretty low level, and this bow that I have here is not exactly the weakest thing in the world, so there is that to take into consideration. But that's essentially how that ability would naturally work. Let's go real quick. So we're going to come over here, because I don't think these guys were affected by my Polarize, so I kind of get the luxury to do this again. So we're going to do this. Ooh, I don't have energy. Whoops. So give me 1 second, let me go get some energy real quick so I can show you guys. Alright, cool. We have energy again, we're good to go. So, right, if I go ahead and I cast this right here, well, I didn't mean to kill those guys, but I think they did get caught by my first one. But my point is, I did this just so you guys could see these things right here. These are the little bits of shrapnel on the ground, or what have you, and these are the things that get stuck up in the bubble and end up doing damage to the enemies while they're in said bubble. So that's just something that you guys can see real quick. I just want to make sure that you guys got to see that. It didn't really matter about the enemies too much, as long as you guys got to see the ability. So we're going to come over to our last pool of enemies here, who I hope are still alive, and they are. We have 2 guys right here. And I'm going to be showing you guys Crush, right? So basically all we do is we lift up these guys here, and boom, they collapse upon themselves, and now they are dead. That's essentially Mag's four abilities. She's like I said, a pretty cool frame. She requires a bit of modding because you want to alter how big your bubbles are, how long the bubble lasts for, things like that. How much damage you're going to be able to basically churn into the bubble and things like that. So a lot of her stuff kind of revolves around her two and her three. But I think she's a super fun frame. It just takes a bit of modding to make her as good as possible. But yeah, not a big deal. All right, so with that being said, we're going to go on to the third Warframe in our list, and it is our boy Volt. Now, in terms of overall recommendation, I'm not going to lie. I would probably recommend Volt, and the only reason why I'm going to recommend Volt is not only because he is a very good frame, but the truth of the matter is that Volt technically, and I do mean technically when I say this, he is technically the hardest frame to get out of the three, simply because to get Volt, you have to join a clan, you have to be in a clan dojo, and then once you're in the dojo, they have to have the research done, and then you would buy the blueprints out of the dojo essentially for credits, and then you would go ahead and get the parts to go ahead and farm him. I mean, if you go into squad chat and quickly join a clan, it's really not that bad. It's not that tedious. But again, you have to be MR3 to join clans and things like that. But it's just kind of like, again, in terms of overall difficulty to acquire, Volt technically would be the hardest, even though what you're doing isn't in itself all that difficult. It's just he takes the longest to get in terms of resources and what you have to do to get him. So a lot of people recommend Volt, and as of late, I do too. Normally, I would tell people Excalibur just because Excalibur is super easy to play and understand, but yeah, Volts again, like I said, just for the work that you have to put in. If you don't want to deal with that, go ahead and pick them up at the beginning. All right, that being said, let's go into Volt's abilities. Volt is all about electricity. He is actually a they market him as a bit of a DPS frame. I think he's a bit better for crowd control and other things, but he does have the ability to do quite a bit of damage, and he is essential for a thing in the game called Eidolon hunting. He is quite the man for that. All right, so that being said, let's go into his abilities, starting with his passive over here. So Volt's passive, grounded movement generates an electrical charge, building up 5 damage per meter that is unleashed with the next attack. So think of that as kind of like, that static cling thing when you were a kid. You rub your socks on the floor and then you kind of get that electrical charge. You poke your friend and they get shocked. Think of it something kind of like that, but like, kind of OP and busted. All right, so let's go over here to his one, which is going to be shock. Launches a shocking projectile. It stuns and deals high damage to a single target and chains damage to nearby enemies. So basically, this is going to be a move that you attack one, it kind of volleys off of everybody, as you can see here in the video clip. It's a pretty good ability, pretty standard. Nothing too major to say about it. It's just a pretty cool ability. Next is speed. Now, speed is one of the abilities that I think Volt is definitely known for because a lot of people use Volt for speed running through missions and a lot of item farming. So, look at speed real quick. Gain a brief boost of movement speed, which affects all allies in range. So, like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory. As you can see, he ends up running a bit faster. It'll apply to yourself. It'll apply to your allies if you have allies, not alloys, alloys. If you have enough power range on it, anybody who's in that range will get affected by it, and they'll also gain that speed boost. Great for speed running stuff. Great for farming. Really cool ability. We're going to head on over to the 3 now. His 3 is going to be called Electric Shield. This allows you to deploy an obstacle of energy providing cover in any situation. In addition to this, however, when shooting through the shield, you will do additional electrical damage, which is pretty good. As you'll learn, as electricity is one of the better stats, elemental stats in the game. And lastly, we have Discharge. Paralyze nearby hostiles with a damaging electric charge. This also shocks approaching enemies. This ability is really good for crowd control, and it does do quite a bit of damage on lower level enemies, so it's definitely worthwhile to use. But a lot of people, what people use it for is a repeating crowd control attack, where basically you keep enemies looped in that little stun animation, and that way, whatever objective or anything is easier to kill them, and you guys don't have to worry about as much. So that's something to also keep in mind. All right, and as per usual, as we did with the other 2 Warframes, I'm going to give you guys a quick look at said abilities. So we're going to come over here once again. I'm going to just double check real fast, make sure all of the bad guys are gone, because I don't want to mess up when I spawn them. So we got those guys are gone. These guys over here are dead. And just real quick, just double check, make sure I didn't forget anybody. Alrighty, cool. All our bad guys are indeed dead. So let's go ahead and spawn some more in and really quickly give you guys a rundown of Volt. So we're going to come over here and go ahead and simulate our 20 enemies. Coming over here, so we have Corpus, guys. Look at them, checking it out, right? So if I go ahead and I press my 1, as you can see, it'll literally just go ahead and volley off of everybody. The volleys don't do as much damage as the initial shot, but it's still, again, pretty potent in itself, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and cast a couple times, kind of kill these guys. And all right, those guys are dead. Fortunately for my 2, I don't need enemies. I'm going to kind of just show you guys that really quickly. I'm going to come over here, grab some energy. This ability is actually pretty fun because if you build enough power strength on it, you tend to run really fast and the animation just looks really silly. But here we go. So this is going to be Volt's speed. As you can see, we get a speed boost. We're able to run a lot faster. Our bullet jumps go for a longer distance. Double jumps go farther. Everything kind of just gets amplified as a result of using this ability. Like I said, I highly recommend having a build on Volt for speed because speedrunning is a thing. It's super useful. It helps a lot in terms of things like capture missions, sometimes even exterminates and stuff like that, or spy missions. So just something to keep in mind. All right, next up is going to be the 3, which technically I don't need enemies for either, but not a big deal, right? We're going to go ahead and do it anyways. So we have these bad guys, and what we're going to do is, boom, cast a shield. Now you can pick up the shield and move it if you so desire. That is a thing in the game that you're able to do. And as well, like I said, when you shoot through this, it does do additional electric damage. So it's going to be way more potent as a result. So shield, super cool ability, incredibly useful. Enemies shooting at it can't exactly harm you, which is always nice. We don't want that happening. And yeah. So let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. So as you can see, you can run around with it. You can move the shield, place it down, and this will last for its entire duration. And we have one more move to show you guys today, which is going to be our discharge. Let me go ahead and get in front of these guys right here. And discharge, like I said, really good CC ability. Matter of fact, let me grab some energy real quick just to be safe. Would be a shame if I can't cast it. There we go. So we're going to come on over here again. And we're going to go ahead and cast our discharge. As you can see, it sends out a giant electrical wave, and most of these enemies actually died. I think this guy's still going to live. Nope, he's going to actually die too. And yeah, so as you can see, it's a pretty high damaging move at lower levels. But later on, you're probably more likely just going to use it as a means of crowd controlling the enemies and keeping them from being able to do any damage to you or your squad mates. All right, that's pretty much going to do it for the abilities. It's going to do it for all the Warframes. What I'm going to do now is kind of give you guys a little bit of some advice, right? So, like I said before, if you're going to play Excalibur, Excalibur is kind of, like I said, he is the poster boy, probably the easiest frame out of the 3 to play, in my personal opinion. He's pretty straightforward. The main abilities you're really going to be using on him are his 2 and his 3, being Radial Blind and Exalted Blade. And it helps a lot of newer players out that like don't entirely understand everything, and they want to do a lot of damage and be able to kill a lot of bosses and kind of get through a lot of the harder content, right? That is essentially why I would recommend Excalibur, just because it kind of makes it a little bit easier and it's not as hard to play. Next, I'm going to be Mag. Mag is, like I said, she's not a terrible frame. She's not the best frame out of the 3 for sure, by no means, for sure. But Mag, just like the other 2, can carry you through the star chart and into endgame content. Mag just requires a bit more work, as you will need certain mods to make the best use of her kit. Lastly, we have Volt. For Volt, like I said, Volt is very versatile. Volt is definitely an endgame Warframe. You can use him for a lot of content in the game. His kit's probably one of the more versatile in the game, being speed, you have CC, you have shield, everything. It's super beneficiary, and it goes a long way. That being said, ultimately the choice is still yours on who you want to play in this game. Understand that Warframe is a game about personal preference and having fun. So realistically, if you want to play Mag or you want to play Excalibur, you want to play Volt, it's perfectly fine. You can pick any one of these 3 Warframes and you will be fine. You should not have to worry too much about it. Don't think too hard on it about like, oh, who's going to do the most damage? Am I going to struggle? Etc., etc., etc. Unless that is personally what you use to justify who you want to play. As always, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is going to do it for me. As always, like the video if you enjoyed it. Please think about subscribing to the YouTube channel. You guys can follow me on social media and Twitch at Hantaa. Links are in the description below. And I will hopefully see you guys in the comments chatting up with me about anything anime, video game related, or any of that good stuff. And as always, guys, just as a quick note, I will see you in the next one. This infinite scroll wheel is actually really fun. Tennokan.